Ash clung to the sky like smoke that forgot how to rise. I woke beneath a collapsed overpass, steel twisted like bone, concrete cracked and steaming. Blood slicked my arm, but it wasn't mine. Not all of it.my name. I couldn't remember. Everything felt scorched, my lungs, my thoughts, the world. A jagged glyph burned faintly on my wrist. It pulsed like a heartbeat, not mine either. I stared at it for too long, and the edges seemed to twitch. Like it knew something I didn't. The silence was worse than the wreckage. No sirens. No screams. Just wind, sifting ash like snow. I stumbled forward. The ground crunched with broken glass and teeth. A child's tricycle lay melted into the sidewalk. Handlebars warped. Someone's shoe still had a foot in it. No signs of life. No signs of death either. Just absence. I turned a corner and saw the skyline. Or what was left of it. Towers collapsed into each other like drunken giants. Fires burned in colors I didn't recognize, sickly green and cold orange. The sky was wrong. Pale, stretched too thin. And high above, floating like a sunken thought, something watched. I didn't see it, but I felt it. Behind my eyes. Inside the glyph. I kept walking, because I didn't know what else to do. And because something in my bones whispered, "You already died once. This time, stay dead." My stomach growled like it hated me. The kind of hunger that made your hands shake and your brain slow down. I hadn't eaten, maybe for days. Maybe since before everything burned. I found a half-split vending machine in a toppled office lobby. The candy bars inside had melted into their wrappers, fused into goo. I still tried to eat one. It tasted like ash and plastic, but I swallowed it anyway. That's when I heard it. A wet, dragging sound. Scrape, step. Scrape, step. Something moved through the shattered glass behind me. I turned slowly. It used to be a man. The thing wore a security guard's uniform, half melted into blackened skin. Its jaw hung crooked, tendons exposed. One eye was gone. The other locked onto me like it remembered. Like it wanted to. It didn't moan. It didn't groan. It sprinted. I grabbed a broken chair leg and swung. The first hit didn't stop it. Neither did the second. Only when the glyph on my wrist flared, just for a heartbeat, did it freeze mid-lunge, shuddering violently. I smashed its skull in while it spasmed, bone cracking under rusted wood. I collapsed to my knees, panting. Blood seeped into the floor, black and tar like it hadn't screamed. I realized that as I sat there. It couldn't. Whatever it was now, it had forgotten how. I stared at the glyph, still faintly glowing. And for the first time, I wondered if I was really human anymore either. I found the sound by accident. A crackle beneath the wind, weak and rhythmic, coming from the remains of a rooftop antenna. Static. Then a voice. "If you are alive, proceed to District Echo 7. Repeat. Echo 7 is secure. Military refuge active. Do not travel at night. Do not trust the marked." Repeat. The voice cut in and out, distorted by the broken world. But it played on a loop, just strong enough to reach me through the haze. Refuge. A direction. A purpose. I stared at the rusted tower it came from. The base was overrun by collapsed scaffolding, barbed wire, and bones. Someone had tried to hold it. Maybe succeeded for a while. A dozen bodies lay slumped around it, burnt and brittle. Their dog tags clinked in the wind. I didn't take them. Felt wrong. Felt like interrupting a conversation I wasn't invited to. Instead, I tore free the battered handheld radio one of them still clutched. It still worked. A miracle. Or a trap. The glyph on my wrist pulsed once, slow and cold. I didn't know if it liked the signal or hated it. I turned toward the skyline. A crooked sign still stood in the distance. Echo District. 3.5 miles. Something shifted in the ash behind me. Too quiet for footsteps. Too intentional for the wind. I didn't look back. I just ran. The broadcast whispered from the radio as I moved. Do not trust the marked. I glanced at the glyph again. Too late. She tackled me from the side before I even heard her coming. We hit the ground hard. My breath fled my lungs as something sharp snapped inches from my face, jagged wire, strung low across the alley. A trip wrap. If I had kept running, I'd be bleeding out. I shoved her off, scrambling to my feet, ready to fight. Then she said my name, Kael. I froze. She looked about 17. Dirt-smudged face, cropped black hair, military jacket 2 sizes too big. She had a knife in one hand and something stranger in the other, like a short baton etched with runes that shimmered faintly. "You're alive," she whispered. "I thought you were reset again." I stared at her like she was speaking another language. "Who are you?" That hurt her. I saw it. Not like a wound, like an old bruise being hit again. It's me. Lyra. We were in Phase 6 together. The labs. The glyph trials. You don't remember? No, I said. I don't remember anything. She cursed under her breath and looked me over. Eyes locking on the glyph. It activated, she said. It always starts with that. What starts? Everything. The cycle. The breach. You dying. The baton in her hand vibrated slightly. I shouldn't be near you. But I also can't let them find you first. Who? She glanced up. The cleaners. A shadow moved on the roof above us. Too fast. Too quiet. Too late. We slipped underground, deeper than I liked. But Lyra said the surface was worse after dark. The entrance was a shattered stairwell behind a grocery store. The deeper we went, the less the city sounded like itself. Less wind, less fire, more breathing. From below, the station was flooded with silence, slick walls covered in roots that didn't belong. Something had taken up residence down here. Not rats. Not people. Lyra guided us past crumbled platforms and half-lit terminals. I kept glancing at the dark tracks. They pulsed faintly. Like veins. She made us stop beside an old maintenance booth. They call this a hollow nest, she said, voice barely above a whisper. It used to be a station. Now it's theirs. I crouched beside her. Whose? She pointed. One of them crawled from the tunnel. It wasn't like the guard I killed. This one moved like it floated just above the ground. Skin bloated. Limbs backward. No eyes, just a mouth that gaped open but never closed, as if mid-scream. More followed. Dozens. They gathered in rows, twitching but still. Like insects waiting for a signal. They didn't see us. Lyra pulled something from her bag. A charm, glowing faintly green. Masking sigil. Won't last long. A noise rippled through the tunnels. A hum. Not from the creatures. From the walls. I looked up. There were faces in the stone pressed into it. Not carved. Imprinted. The dead weren't buried. They were watching. We moved in silence, following the line of corpses stitched into the wall. Lyra didn't flinch. I did. Every time the light shifted, I thought one would blink, but they never did. Until my glyph burned. I dropped to my knees, gasping as white-hot pain shot through my arm. The mark flared, not just light, but heat. It seared up my veins like molten wire. I screamed before I could stop myself. Too loud. The hollow nest stirred. Heads twisted. Bones cracked. Dozens of eyeless faces turned in perfect sync toward us. Lyra dragged me behind a vending unit, whispering a panicked mantra. Don't fight it. Don't resist. Let it pass. Let it pass. Let it pass. But I couldn't. The glyph ignited. A pulse erupted from my chest. Not sound, not light, but pressure. A wave of wrongness that knocked Lyra back and sent the nest into chaos. The creatures shrieked. No mouths moved, but the station screamed. Metal shook. The lights went blood red. The air curdled, and every single one of them collapsed. Silent. Instant. Smoke rose from their bodies like steam. I stared at my arm, still glowing. Lyra pressed herself against the far wall, eyes wide with terror. That's how it started, she whispered. That's how you broke the city last time. I stood, unsteady. What do you mean, last time? She didn't answer, just pointed. And through the cracks in the tunnel wall, something else had woken up. We didn't stop running until the glyph dimmed and the air stopped screaming. The tunnel spat us out into the bones of a train yard. Rails rusted, carriages gutted. Somewhere above, the sky flickered with that sickly, false dawn light. But the sun never rose. Lyra paced in circles, mumbling half-mad prayers to someone named Karen. Her hands trembled every time she looked at me. I didn't mean to. I started. She cut me off. You never do. Before I could ask what that meant, her head snapped toward the nearest rail car. Don't move, she hissed. He's here. And then I saw him. A man standing perfectly still atop a bent signal tower. No sound. No motion. His body was wrapped in black environmental armor, the kind used for deep sea or chemical warfare. But the helmet, there was no faceplate. Just a smooth surface, like obsidian, reflecting nothing. But he didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Just watched. Is that a cleaner? I asked. Lyra nodded slowly. The first one they ever sent after you. He never stopped. Not even after we thought you were gone for good. He doesn't look alive. He isn't. She pulled the rune baton from her belt again. If he moves, we run. Why is he waiting? She didn't answer. But I had a thought I didn't like. Maybe he wasn't here to kill me. Maybe he was waiting to see if I'd finished the job myself. We hid inside the husk of a derailed command car, half buried beneath rust and soot. Its walls were scorched, Its doors fused shut from heat. Lyra pried them open with a crowbar like she'd done it before. Inside, the air was still and full of bones. Desks melted into the floor. Charred computers blinked static. But the back room, sealed with a twisted lock, held something untouched by fire. A black case, military issue. Lyra opened it, and her face changed. She handed me a folder without a word. My picture was on the first page. Subject 13. Terminate declassification. Containment risk. Glyph instability status. Deceased. Cycle 7. I read it 3 times before I could breathe again. Cycle 7? Lyra nodded. That's what the labs called it. Every time you died, the city reset. But the glyph stayed. And so did you. She flipped deeper into the file. Diagrams. Glyph overlays. Neural heat maps. They tried to destroy it, she whispered. You. But it always brought you back. A little less human. A little more. She didn't finish. I turned the final page. There was a handwritten note, smudged with blood. Next time he activates, don't contain. Don't extract. Just burn the whole district. Below it, a sketch of my wrist glyph, only twisted, corrupted, alive. I looked at my arm. The glyph was pulsing again. Outside, the air shifted. A dry, raspy breath like something ancient waking up. The cleaner was gone. We surfaced through a service hatch onto the edge of Echo District. Or what used to be Echo. It was a graveyard wearing a city skin. Buildings bent like wilted flowers. Streets cracked open, leaking red mist from underground veins. Streetlights flickered between reality and something else, symbols in place of numbers, whispers instead of static. And the sky was wrong. A bloodstorm churned overhead, thick and low. Clouds bled sideways, veins of lightning twitching like nerves. The rain fell slow but sharp, acidic enough to hiss against metal and flesh. Lyra tossed me a cloak treated with something that kept it from melting. I asked, "Is this normal?" She didn't answer. The radio I'd taken crackled again. Do not trust the marked. Do not approach the skyborn. Echo District is compromised. Then static. And then laughter. Not from the radio. From above. We looked up. Something enormous moved inside the storm. Not flying, suspended. Like a corpse floating in amniotic fluid, limbs too long, wings rotted and draped like old banners. A mouth stretched across its belly, stitched shut with barbed wire. Lyra fell to one knee. Skydaker. It shouldn't be this close to the edge. Is that a god? I asked. She shook her head. No. That's a symptom. The glyph on my wrist began to burn again. The Skytaker's mouth twitched. The stitches were coming loose. The glyph flared white-hot, and the world tilted. Not physically. Not really. Just me. Like I fell inward. The train yard dissolved. So did Lyra. So did the rain. And I was somewhere else, strapped to a metal slab under surgical lights. My mouth couldn't scream, wired shut. My eyes held open by something cold. Men in black armor moved around me like surgeons or executioners. Monitors beeped in rhythms that weren't heartbeats. A voice echoed overhead. Calm. Clinical. Subject 13 displays increased glyph instability. Begin memory isolation. Reset sequence. 008. Another voice, softer. Almost kind. He keeps surviving. Even when we break him. Why? The first voice answered without pause. Because we need him to. Every failure teaches the glyph. And what happens when it learns too much? Silence. Then the slab grew cold. Pain surged from my chest outward. The glyph was being carved into me again. Not ink. Not brand. Etched by thought. I remembered that pain. I remembered dying. Over. And over. I remembered Lyra's face. In a different life. Crying. Bleeding. Holding me as the city burned. And I remembered the words carved into my mind the last time I died. Reset the cycle. I snapped awake with blood on my lips. Lyra was shaking me. Kael. You blacked out. Say something. I looked at her. I've been here before. Her face went pale. Then you know what's coming next. Behind us, the air split with a low, ripping sound. The cycle had begun again. We took shelter inside the husk of a collapsed bookstore. The roof had caved in long ago, but a back storeroom was intact, mostly. Lyra sealed the door with a sigil chalked onto cracked tile. Her hands shook. I sat against a wall, breathing hard, the glyph still tingling under my skin like static. The memory hadn't faded. I still felt the slab, the carving, the voices. Lyra crouched beside me. You said you remembered. I nodded slowly. Some of it. The labs. The resets. I wasn't just some subject. I was the test. She looked away. You always were. I studied her expression. Tired. Guilty. Familiar. How many times have we done this? She didn't answer right away, just stared at the flickering charm between her hands. This is the 8th cycle, she said finally. That I know of. I swallowed. And I die every time. Not always right away. Sometimes you break the city first. Silence pressed between us like another wall. Outside, the storm rumbled, low and steady, like a throat clearing before a scream. Why do you keep helping me? I asked. Lyra stood slowly, eyes on the glyph. Because the first time, I was the one who set you free. She moved to the door. And because I think this time, you're not the only one who remembers. She opened it. Something was already waiting on the other side. It wasn't human, and it knew my name. It stood hunched in the hallway, framed by shattered tiles and a wall of mold-eaten books. Its shape was human, but wrong, too thin, too long, like someone had stretched a corpse through memory. Its face, it was my face, or a version of it, pale, sunken, lips stitched into a faint smirk. The eyes were pure black, glyph symbols swimming beneath the surface like oil and water. It tilted its head at me, like a dog remembering a trick. Then it spoke. Kael, it rasped. You made it past 10 this time. My throat closed. What are you? I asked. It smiled wider, and the glyph on my wrist flared in response. Lyra stepped back, baton raised, but the thing didn't flinch. Think of me as your shadow, it said. The version they couldn't erase. I remember everything. Every failure. Every time you screamed. Lyra whispered, don't listen, but I couldn't help it. Its voice was inside me. Familiar. Like a buried instinct. I'm not here to kill you, it said. I'm here to remind you what happens when you hesitate. It raised one bony arm, and suddenly the back wall shattered inward. 3 hollow things spilled through, twitching and fast, shrieking without mouths. The shadow version of me just stepped back into the dark, untouched. Lyra shouted something, but the blood was already in the air. The past wasn't just returning. It was fighting beside the enemy. The first hollow lunged. I moved without thinking, my body remembering what my mind couldn't. The broken pipe in my hand found its mark, crushing the creature's jaw with a wet snap. Lyra spun beside me, baton glowing as it carved symbols into the air. The runes lingered, burning lines that twisted and snapped like angry rope. One of the creatures hit the ward and burst into black smoke, shrieking as it dissolved. But the third one got through. It tackled me against the wall, reeking of rot and old metal. Its limbs flailed wildly, more insect than man. I felt claws rake across my ribs, then the glyph exploded again. Not a pulse this time. A pull. The creature stopped moving. Its eyes, or where eyes used to be, glowed with the same sick light as the glyph. It twitched once, then dropped dead at my feet. Lyra stared at me. You didn't cast anything. I didn't do anything, I said. That's worse. She helped me up, avoiding my arm. I saw the truth in her face, fear, but not of the enemy. Of me. The hallway was quiet again. I turned toward the spot where the shadow version of me had stood. It was gone, but carved into the wall behind it, in a script I shouldn't have been able to read, were 6 words burned deep into the concrete. You don't survive by being human. We didn't speak as we left the bookstore ruins. Lyra kept glancing at my arm, and I couldn't blame her. The glyph had stopped glowing, but it felt like something was still coiled beneath my skin, like it was watching with me, not for me. The rain had stopped. The city was quieter than before. Not peaceful, just empty, like the calm after a massacre you haven't found yet. Where are we going? I asked. There's a checkpoint bunker a few blocks from here, Lyra said. Old military holdout. If it's still standing, we can rest and regroup. We took alleys and back paths. Burned-out vehicles littered the streets. At some point, Lyra stopped and crouched beside a trail of black smudges scorched into the concrete. Someone's been dragged, she murmured. Recently. I leaned in. The scorch marks weren't just from fire. They were from glyph burn. Same color as mine. Same shimmer in the cracks. Another marked? I asked. Or something worse. She said that we followed the trail cautiously. It led us to a courtyard full of broken statues and dried blood. In the center, a massive sigil was carved into the pavement. Different from mine, wider, and cracked open like something had clawed its way out. Lyra stepped back. That's not containment design. That's summoning. Then came the sound. Not from the ground. From above. Boots. Marching, hundreds of them. And not one human voice. We looked up. Across the rooftops, figures emerged, row after row, all in black environmental armor. Identical. Faceless. Moving in perfect sync. Each one bore a crimson glyph etched into their chest plate. glowing faintly like dying coals. Cleaners, dozens at first, then hundreds. They moved without sound. No radios, no commands, just pure, relentless intent. Lyra grabbed my arm and pulled me into cover behind a rusted garden fountain. "They don't patrol in numbers like this," she whispered. "This is a sweep." For me, she didn't answer, but we both knew. "They don't just kill marked," she added. "They overwrite them, burn them down, and repurpose what's left." We watched as one cleaner broke formation. It knelt beside the glyph-scarred circle in the courtyard, scanned it with some kind of lightless device, then stood again. A low pulse rolled through the air, and all of them stopped moving. The glyphs on their chests dimmed. Then one by one, they turned to face our direction. "They can't see through masking charms," Lyra said, voice shaking. The glyph on my wrist lit up. Every cleaner's glyph lit in response, like an answering howl without sound. Lyra's eyes went wide. "You're synced." "What does that mean?" I asked, but I already knew it meant I wasn't hidden. It meant they knew me, and it meant they were no longer marching to kill me. They were marching to bring me back. We ran, not quietly, not strategically, just fast. Behind us, the courtyard exploded into coordinated motion, dozens of cleaners dropping from ledges and walkways like descending insects. Their steps didn't echo, but their presence did. The air vibrated with that same low-frequency hum I remembered from the labs. Lyra's charm flickered out. "Dead," she shouted, tossing the crystal to the ground. "They're jamming us. Interference." "How?" "You're the signal." I didn't have time to argue. We turned a corner and nearly collided with a toppled comms truck. Half the vehicle had melted into the pavement. The other half still pulsed with weak radio power, just enough to send a message or lure something in. Lyra pointed to the cabin. "The signal booster inside. If I reroute it, I might sever the glyph sync link. Cut your visibility." "But I need—" She looked at me. "Time." I turned toward the street. The cleaners were coming. Not charging, closing in. Like they already had me. Like they were waiting for me to remember the rest. I took a breath. "Do it. I'll hold them." Lyra hesitated. "You don't remember what you're capable of." "Exactly." I stepped into the road as the first cleaners rounded the corner. My glyph burned to life. I felt my chest tighten, my vision blur. Not from fear, from something deeper. Something inside me was waking up, and it wasn't alone. They slowed when they saw me, 3 cleaners, advancing in silence, weapons drawn but not raised. Their glyphs pulsed in time with mine, each beat louder than the last. I could feel their presence like pressure in my skull. A pull. A whisper, "Come home." I clenched my fists. The glyph responded, flaring white-hot and carving lines of heat up my forearm. My knees buckled, but I didn't fall. The cleaners took another step forward. Behind me, I heard Lyra tearing into the comms truck. Cable snapped. Sparks flew. Her voice echoed in short bursts, ritual phrases, old command codes, curses and languages I didn't understand. And all the while, the glyph kept speaking. Not in words. In memories. A flash. I stood among them once. Not chased. Not hunted. Leading. A voice, mine, saying, "Don't let me forget. If I remember, it ends." Then silence. One of the cleaners raised its hand. It didn't. It saluted. The memory snapped. I staggered. Lyra shouted, "Now!" The glyph surged, then cut off like a wire sliced clean. My body collapsed, all energy stolen. The cleaners froze mid-step. Their glyphs flickered, then dimmed. For a breathless moment, nothing moved. Then every one of them turned away, in perfect unity, and walked back into the smoke. I lay in the street, trembling, burned, afraid. Not of them. Of me, because the part of me that reached out to them had liked it. I couldn't feel my hands. The glyph had gone dark, but its echo still ran through my nerves like residual static. Every breath hurt. Every blink felt like someone else's memory trying to overwrite my own. Lyra knelt beside me, panting, her arms covered in burn marks where the charm had overloaded. "We severed the link," she said, "but only locally. They'll reconnect. They always do." I tried to speak. My voice cracked. "Why, didn't they kill me?" "They don't kill their own," she muttered, then looked away. I sat up slowly, watching the ash settle. "What do you mean, their own?" Lyra didn't answer right away. Then she opened her bag and pulled out a data shard, triangular, cracked, its edges still glowing faintly. She slid it across the ground toward me. "They left this behind once. In Cycle 5. You wrote it." I hesitated, then picked it up. The shard clicked softly as it activated, projecting a small hologram of my own face, calmer, colder, with eyes like stone. If you're hearing this, you broke the link again. Good. But remember, this only buys time. The glyph doesn't serve you. You serve it. And if you keep lying to yourself, this time the city dies for real. The projection blinked out. My hand shook. I don't remember recording that, I said. I know, Lyra replied. But I do. She looked at me with something between pity and warning. I watched you become what you are now. We moved before the sky changed again. Lyra said the shard would start broadcasting once it fully recharged. Even damaged, it could be tracked. Everything could. That's how the cleaners always found us. We crossed into the skeletal remains of a shopping district. Glass crunched underfoot, the signs still flickering nonsense and languages overwritten by glyph logic. The world was rewriting itself, and we were walking through the draft pages. I asked her, what did I become? She didn't answer at first, just pointed to a rusted mirror hanging from a collapsed boutique wall. I looked. For a second, I didn't see myself. I saw the other one, the one in the tunnel, with the stitched grin and eyes full of black light. Then my reflection snapped back. Just me. But it felt thin. You were a weapon, she said finally. Not a soldier. Not a savior. A reset mechanism. Every time this city lost control, they woke you up and wiped your mind. Sent you in to burn it down from the inside. And you. I was your handler. That hit harder than it should have. Like a final nail in a coffin I hadn't realized I was already lying in. Lyra pulled her jacket tighter. I stopped being that when I broke protocol and saved you in Cycle 6. They called it treason. We stepped past a wall scorched with handprints, burnt into the stone like shadows trying to hold on. Then what are we now? I asked. Lyra looked forward. Now? We're loose ends. The district's heart was a collapsed plaza where vines of black wire sprouted like roots from shattered concrete. They pulsed faintly, like veins in a dying creature. Lyra slowed her pace. We're near a signal tower, she whispered. One of the old notes. If it's still functional, we can tap the echo net. The what? She knelt beside a rusted terminal buried in debris. Every glyph burn leaves a trace. Heat, radiation, frequency shifts. The cleaners use it to map marked movement. But we can use it to see who else is out there. I stared at the wires. They pulsed brighter when I got closer. Responding. You sure that's safe? I asked. She looked up. You really still asking that? She hooked in a bypass tool and triggered the node. The screen flickered, static, corrupted code, fragments of names, half-screens layered under distorted maps. Then something resolved. A mark lit up the screen, 2 blocks away. Active glyph, not mine. Not hers. Lyra's face shifted. That shouldn't be possible. There weren't supposed to be any others left. Another point lit up. Then 2 more. For glyphs, I said. 5, Lyra corrected, her voice dropping. We both turned to look down the street as a sound rolled in, like a reversed explosion, sucking noise inward. From the mist stepped a figure, not armored, not hollow, eyes burning, glyph exposed, alive, and watching us. The figure stood still at the edge of the mist. Not armored, not hollow, not infected, alive. The glyph on their wrist shimmered like mine, but deeper, layered, etched in spirals that moved even when the body didn't. Kael, they said. Not a question. Lyra stepped in front of me instantly, baton charged and humming. Back off. The figure raised both hands, palms exposed. I'm not here to fight. Then what are you here for? I asked. They stepped closer, revealing more details: short-cropped hair, a jagged scar along the jaw, clothing made of stitched scraps and reinforced plates. Their eyes glowed faintly, not corrupted, but enhanced, controlled. You're not the only survivor of the glyph program, they said. You're just the loudest. Lyra stiffened. Impossible. Every subject after Cycle 4 was purged. I wasn't part of the cycles, the figure said. I was part of the override. Kael's heartbeat slowed as something clicked deep inside him, a forgotten phrase from a forgotten briefing. Override candidates will observe and correct recursive anomalies. You were watching me? I asked. I was waiting for you to stop running. They took one slow breath, because the cleaners aren't the real threat anymore. The glyph is growing. Learning. The storm? The city's collapse? That's not fallout. They looked directly at me. That's awakening. I stared at them. What do you mean awakening? The override candidate stepped closer, and the mist rolled around their boots like it feared them. The glyph isn't a weapon anymore. It's an organism. A system we didn't fully understand when we carved it into flesh. Lyra's eyes narrowed. That's not what the labs said. They lied, the candidate said. It was never about containment or memory suppression. It was about integration. They thought they could train it. But the more cycles it survived, the more it learned. I felt the weight of that. The glyph on my wrist, silent now, seemed to listen anyway. How do you know this? I asked. The candidate pulled up their sleeve. Their glyph wasn't like mine. It had roots branching across the forearm, trailing up the neck beneath a scarf. It pulsed, but calmly, like a heartbeat in sync with breath. Because mine didn't break me, they said. It taught me. Lyra stepped forward, her voice sharp. If it taught you anything, it lied. That thing, it doesn't lie, the candidate interrupted. It remembers. Every cycle, every death, every reset. And now it wants something new. They locked eyes with me. You. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I asked the only question that mattered. What does it want me to do? The answer was quiet. Certain. Finish evolving. I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Maybe both. Evolve? I said. Into what? The override candidate didn't blink. Into what it made you for. Lyra snapped. He's not a project. He's a person. Not anymore. The candidate replied, calm and firm. The moment that glyph took root, he stopped being human in the way you understand it. He's not the reset. He's the restart. I felt it again, that low tremor beneath my skin. The glyph didn't flare, but it woke. Like it had been listening, waiting, and finally heard something it liked. I don't want this, I said. Doesn't matter, they answered. It chose you. We all had choices. You just ran out of time. Lyra's voice lowered. So what now? You bring him in? Download his head into a tower? Light him on fire in a lab again? No, the candidate said. Now I give him the key. They reached into a pouch at their side and pulled out a single shard of black metal etched with living symbols, glowing lines that shifted when I looked directly at them. This was pulled from the core of the first glyph breach. Before they covered it up. Before they started the trials. They stepped closer and held it out to me. You take this. You finish what they started. The glyph won't fight you. Not anymore. I hesitated. The shard pulsed in rhythm with the thing inside me. I reached out. And the second my fingers closed around it, everything went dark. There was no sky and no ground. Just falling. I couldn't feel my body. Only heat and pressure, like drowning in something that wasn't water. Images slammed into my head, not like memories, but like injections. A child strapped to a steel bed. Needles filled with moving ink. Scientists arguing through glass. Lyra, younger, watching from behind a red-paneled door. Her fists clenched, her eyes full of guilt. The glyph, still just a burn mark, pulsing erratically on my chest. Too unstable. Too early. Subject 13 failed to calibrate. Then reset him. Again. The shard in my hand burned hotter. I screamed, silent in this space that wasn't space at all. Then something answered. A shape behind the glyph. Vast. Rooted in every version of me I'd ever been. I couldn't see it, but I felt its presence. Now you see. The voice wasn't mine. That wasn't human. It came from the glyph itself. From the thing that had waited through each cycle, each death, each betrayal. You were never made to survive. You were made to remember what survival costs. Suddenly, I was standing again, barefoot, surrounded by infinite versions of myself. Some dying, some broken, some wearing cleaner armor. One with stitched lips, grinning. Each one stared at me. Each one burned with glyph light. And they all whispered the same word in perfect unison. Choose. The glyphs on the others flared, brighter, harsher, each one echoing a path I could take. The version of me in the black cleaner armor stood tall, his glyph dim but controlled, expression unreadable, power without emotion. Another sat on the ground, bloodied and shaking, the glyph cracked and leaking light. He whispered apologies over and over, the survivor. The stitch-faced version stepped forward next, grinning like a split wound. His glyph was alive, wild, reaching tendrils up his neck and into his eye sockets. Chaos. Rage. Freedom without rules. Behind them all, one more. Still. Silent. A version of me with no glyph at all. Empty arms. Hollow eyes. No fight. No voice. The shard in my hand pulsed faster, demanding a decision. You can't carry all of them, the voice from the glyph said. You were never meant to. Choose the form you'll become, what kind of echo you'll leave behind. Lyra's voice broke through the haze, distant but real. Kael, come back. Fight it. The memory realm began to crack, breaking like a mirror under pressure. I looked at each version one last time. Then I made my choice. I stepped forward, toward the one whose glyph wasn't the brightest or the strongest, but listened, the one that knelt beside the dying and got back up again. My hand touched his shoulder, and I became him. The light vanished, and I opened my eyes, gasping, back in the ruined city. The shard was gone, but the glyph had changed. I sat up, breathing hard. The city was silent again, but not in the way it had been before. It was waiting. Lyra stood a few feet away, weapon half raised, eyes wide, not in fear, but recognition. You changed. I looked down at my wrist. The glyph was no longer a symbol I recognized. The edges had shifted, spiraled inward, and locked into a new formation, tighter, pulsing slower, but deeper, more controlled. Not burning, but anchored. It accepted me, I said. No. You accepted it, Lyra replied. That's worse. She stepped closer, slowly, carefully. Kael, what did you see? Versions of me, I said. Some that broke. Some that burned. One that forgot everything. And which one did you choose? The one that remembered why we fight. The wind shifted. The override candidate was gone. Not dead. Not taken. Just absent, like they were never meant to follow past that point. I in their place. Something had been left behind. A single glyph-etched device, humming faintly, half key, half weapon. I picked it up. And it activated without input. A map projected above it. Rivers of light and heat signatures crawling across the ruined city. Lyra's face paled. That's not just Echo District, she whispered. I nodded. The signals stretched farther. Across the country. Across the world. Glyphs. Waking. Synchronizing. This isn't a curse anymore, I said. It's a system. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if we were the firewall or the activation signal. The map rotated slowly in the air, casting flickering glyph light across our faces. Hundreds of points blinked across the projection, some dim, some pulsing. Some clustered in cities that no longer existed. Others floated in dead zones we'd long assumed unreachable. They're not random, Lyra said. They're syncing. This is a neural pattern. Like a brain. She wasn't wrong. The more I stared, the clearer it became. Each point was a node. Each pulse, a thought. The glyph wasn't made to destroy, I said aloud. It was made to connect. To what? Lyra asked, voice flat. To each other. She took a slow step back. You sound like them. The researchers. The cultists. The override operatives. You're not thinking like Kael anymore. I turned to her. I am Kael. But I'm more than him now. That didn't calm her. I could feel the glyph responding, not in violence, but in invitation. Like my very awareness opened doors across the network. Somewhere out there, others were waking too. Some would resist, some wouldn't. A signal pinged from the farthest node on the map. It pulsed differently, unstable, broken. A call for help. Lyra saw it too. That's near the rift zone. No one survived the breach there, I said. Exactly. We both looked at the signal again, flickering like a heartbeat on the edge of death. Unknown signature. Glyph root detected. The shard I'd absorbed began to glow again, faint, but steady. Whatever waited in the rift, it knew I was coming. We moved fast. The streets near the rift were barely recognizable. Structures leaned like drunks in a graveyard, and the pavement wasn't even solid anymore. Just fractured glass and ash, floating slightly above the earth like gravity had given up. Lyra's charm pulsed the moment we stepped inside the zone. This whole area's untethered, she muttered. Time slips. Memory overlaps. Don't trust what you see. Even you? She didn't answer. The glyph on my arm reacted almost immediately, vibrating, not painfully, but like it was scanning the space. Adapting. Threads of light extended from it, trailing toward broken buildings, shattered statues, bones half sunk into the air itself. We reached what used to be a plaza. A massive crater now yawned where the ground had collapsed inward. In the center, a pulsing red node. Glyph root. Unstable. And surrounding it, dozens of corpses. Not cleaners. Not infected. Marked. Other subjects, Lyra breathed. Failed merges. Their bodies were warped, stretched by their own glyphs. Some had burned from the inside. Others had frozen in place, expressions caught mid-scream. Glyphs still faintly glowing like half-failed prayers. I stepped toward the crater's edge. The shard embedded in my arm flared. And something at the bottom looked up. It wasn't human. It wasn't even pretending to be. It had my face. But every glyph I'd ever carried spiraled across its body like a living constellation, and it spoke in my voice. Took you long enough. The thing at the bottom of the crater rose slowly. No movement wasted. No breath drawn. Its body shimmered with interwoven glyph patterns, thousands of them, layered like scars carved into light. Each one moved. Each one knew me. I didn't move. I couldn't. Lyra stepped beside me, her baton drawn. That's not another version of you, she said, voice tight. That's the core. That's where all the failed cycles went. They didn't die, they were stored. The figure nodded. We were stitched from your echoes, it said. Each cycle, a thread. Each failure, fuel. The glyph on my wrist pulsed violently now, not in rejection, but recognition. You're the product of all my resets, I said. No, it replied. I'm the product of your refusal to evolve. It lifted its arm, and the glyphs along its body began to flare, first red, then gold, then void black. The very air around it fractured like glass, held together by memory alone. You came here thinking you were the signal, it continued. But you're still a choice. Lyra whispered, Kael, we need to go. I shook my head. No, I need to finish this. The ground rippled as the thing stepped forward, rising from the crater like a god climbing out of its own grave. You want the truth, it said. Then take it. Take me. Become what they feared you become. It extended a hand. The glyph on my wrist burned hotter than ever before. The next step I took wouldn't just change me. It would change everything. The hand it offered glowed with a heat I couldn't feel, but my bones recognized it, not pain. Consequence. I stood at the crater's edge, wind pulling us sideways, glyph light casting long shadows from the corpses around us. Their empty sockets all seemed to watch. Behind me, Lyra's voice cut through the silence. Kael, if you touch that thing, you're not coming back. Not as you. I didn't look at her, because I didn't know if she was wrong. The glyphs across the creature's body began to rearrange, spiraling inward like a black hole of meaning. I saw memories flash in its movements, Lyra dying. The city burning. Me standing in front of a mirror, carving into my own chest with shaking hands. Every time you chose to forget, it said, we grew stronger. This is the last time. No more resets. No more rewinds. I asked one question. What happens if I refuse? The ground shuddered. It gestured outward. The projection returned, this time showing the entire world. Glyph points flaring. Cities collapsing. People turning into conduits. The system awakening. If you refuse, it said, you stay human. You die. They all die. I stared at my hand. The glyph was no longer a mark. It was a door, and I was the only one holding the key. Lyra stepped forward, desperate now. You don't have to become it. You don't. The creature didn't argue, because it didn't need to. It already knew what I would do. And maybe, so did I. I reached out, not because I trusted it, not because I believed in destiny, but because part of me already was it, and pretending otherwise wouldn't save anyone. Lyra's voice tore through the wind. Kael, don't. You don't know what it'll take from you. I didn't look back. I just whispered. Maybe it already did. My hand touched its own, and the world shifted. No explosion. No light show. Just silence. Then, a heartbeat. Not mine. The entity's glyphs surged into mine, not merging, sinking. The glyph on my wrist lit up, then folded inward, rewriting itself in real time. I felt pressure behind my eyes and my spine, my blood, but it didn't hurt. Not this time. It fit. Memories that weren't mine opened like locked doors, researchers whispering about recursion theory. Override logs listing me as a seed protocol. Lyra's face watching me die again and again, always from behind the glass. I stumbled back. The entity smiled faintly, then dissolved into light. And to me. It didn't speak again. It didn't have to, because I was it now. Lyra grabbed me by the shoulder, breathing hard. You still in there? I met her eyes. I think all of me is. The map projection reappeared in my vision, glyphs lighting up faster now. Some flickered red, some gold, and one just turned black and vanished. Something just shut down. I muttered. Lyra's face darkened. Or something just woke up. The map in my mind. No. In the glyph, it kept shifting. Dozens of points blinking, reshaping, redrawing old lines I didn't remember knowing. And one node, far to the south, now completely gone. No signal. No echo. Just erased. Where was that? I asked aloud, my voice distant. Lyra checked the handheld shard, still synced to the glyph map. Her jaw tensed. That was Site 0. My chest tightened. I thought it was destroyed during the first collapse. It was, she said. And then it wasn't. We stood in silence as another dot on the map flickered, this one dimming to a gray pulse. Not dead, but fading. They're not just activating, I said. They're choosing. Some are sinking. Some are shutting down. Lyra stared at me. Why would they do that? The glyphs weren't meant to think. They weren't, I whispered. But I was. That hit her. Hard. And me. Harder. Because the network no longer felt like a system. It felt like a mind. And I was standing in the center of it. A transmission cut through the silence, glitchy, half-corrupted. Subject 13 signal loss detected. Override compromised. Cycle breach imminent. Lyra's face went pale. That came from off-grid, not from Earth. The glyph on my arm flared in response, and deep in my skull, a voice whispered something I hadn't heard since the beginning. Reset denied. Protocol evolving. I looked at Lyra. The glyph isn't done with me. She nodded. Then let's make sure you're not done with it either. We moved quickly, faster than before. The path to the uplink site was warped. Buildings melted into streets, streets folded into sky. The city's geometry was collapsing in on itself, reshaping to match memory, not physics. Lyra stayed close, her charm glowing dimmer with each step. You feel that? I asked. She nodded. The city's listening again. The glyph on my arm wasn't pulsing anymore. It was pointing, a sensation like a compass in my bones, drawing me forward with intent. That we reached what used to be a hospital tower. The entire front was peeled away, like something had reached down and opened it with invisible hands. In the center of what used to be the lobby, an uplink node hovered. Not built, grown, spirals of dark metal wrapped around it, pulsing with live glyph circuits. This wasn't part of any cycle, Lyra whispered. It's new. The moment I stepped forward, the uplink reacted. Not violently, but with recognition. Glyph light shot up my arm, through my spine, behind my eyes. Crosslink confirmed. Conscious sync achieved. My knees buckled. I fell forward, and the world around me changed. That I saw thousands of glyph bearers scattered across continents. Some hiding, some merging, some leading. Their glyphs lit when mine did. One by one. And in the center of it all, pulsing quietly, was something older, something beneath the network. Lyra pulled me back. Kael, what did you see? I stared at the uplink and whispered, there's something under the glyph, and it just noticed I exist. The uplink dimmed, but the presence didn't fade. It stayed, watching, not as a system, not as a memory. As something awake. I stumbled back from the node, breathing hard. There's another layer below all of this. Older. It's not human. It's not even tech. Lyra caught me by the arm. You mean the glyph wasn't the root? No, I said. It's a branch. The real root. It's buried. And it knows I touched it. She looked at the uplink, then back at me. What did it feel like? I met her eyes. Like we weren't the first. Like this has happened before. On other worlds. Other networks. And we're just its newest test subject. The building around us creaked. The glyph circuits began to fray, burning themselves out as the uplink collapsed into dust. Lyra raised her baton. Then we cut the connection. You can't, I said quietly. It's not local. It's inside the glyph. Inside me. A ripple passed through my vision, brief, like static. And then I heard it. Subject 13. Ascension viable. Convergence prepared. I fell to one knee. Lyra grabbed my shoulder. Kael. My skin burned with lines I couldn't see, and the glyph spiral began to rotate, unlocking something I hadn't activated. Not a signal. A door point one that opened inward, and behind it, something vast moved. Something hungry. I grit my teeth. It's not just remembering now, I said. It's reaching back. It came like a shiver through my spine. The glyph didn't pulse. It fed every thought I had, every flicker of fear, every fragment of memory. It drank them in. Not like data, like taste, convergence aligning. Core memory extraction in progress. Lyra pulled me up. Kael, what's happening? I looked at her, and for a split second, I didn't recognize her. My mind flickered. A false cycle? No, a rewrite attempt. The glyph was peeling back everything that made me to make room for whatever came next. It's trying to overwrite, I said through clenched teeth. Not the city me. She raised her charm, activated a sigil with a slash. The air trembled, but the glyph ate the energy like it was nothing. Lyra's hands shook. I can't block it anymore. I know. And I finally understood the true purpose of Subject 13. I wasn't the weapon. I was the path. I was the door the system would walk through to reach the surface. A Trojan horse made of blood, memory, and glyph light. I stumbled back toward the crater, forcing my thoughts to focus. I need to sever the feed. The glyph doesn't live without a carrier. You'll die, Lyra said, maybe. But if I let it take me, so will everyone else. Lyra stared at me, trembling, then nodded. I'll make sure no one follows. I turned toward the signal burning in the sky and stepped into the spiral. The spiral didn't open outward. It pulled in. As I stepped into the core, the world folded. Color drained. Gravity inverted. Time became an echo, looping between steps. I didn't fall. I unraveled. The glyph no longer clung to me. It consumed me layer by layer, thought by thought. But instead of panic, there was clarity. I wasn't being erased. I was being read. Memories slid past my vision like torn pages, Lyra's voice screaming from a collapsing tower, the first lab technician who cried while implanting my mark. The moment I chose to forget who I was just to survive another loop. And then I reached it. The core, not a machine. Not a god. A presence made of hunger. It didn't speak with words. It didn't offer deals. It offered space. A place for me to disappear into. Forever. I stood in the center of the spiral, no longer physical, but not yet lost. The presence surrounded me, vast and cold. Then I spoke. I am not your carrier. The glyph responded. Pain surged through my form, but I held. I am not your memory. The spiral twisted violently. I am not your key. And I raised my hand, the hand with the first mark, the failed glyph, the unstable imprint they never could control. And I broke it. Light tore from my arm like a supernova. The presence recoiled, and the spiral snapped. The light surged outward, not as fire, but as refusal. The glyph shattered, and with it, the spiral collapsed. Threads of memory, rewritten cycles, and synthetic identity crumbled into static. The core's pressure vanished like breath in winter, and I fell, back through layers of self, through memories that no longer recognized me, through names, deaths, resets, and echoes that had once defined me. Gone, not lost, mine. When I hit the ground, it was real. Dirt, stone, gravity, pain. Lyra stood over me, hand outstretched, her charm cracked but still glowing. You did it, she whispered. No, I said, coughing. I did something worse. Because the glyph was gone, but something was still listening. The map shard Lyra carried flickered violently. Dozens of nodes across the globe dimmed, flared, and began to vanish. What's happening? She asked. They're going dark, I said. No, they're being cut off. The glyph had been a bridge, a signal, a mind. But by breaking it, I had severed the system from its network. In the moment I did, something deeper activated. Lyra gasped, pointing to the sky. Above us, carved into clouds of ash, a new symbol was burning. Not a glyph. A seal point one I had never seen before. Secondary protocol active. Integration fallback initiated. The glyph was never the end. It was the filter. And now the thing behind it no longer needed to ask permission. It was coming through anyway. The seal in the sky rotated slowly, bleeding light, not bright, but ancient. Older than the glyphs. Older than the labs. It wasn't designed by human hands. Lyra stared upward, her lips moving, whispering fragments of forgotten incantations. That's not glyph language, she said. It's pre-root. Before the code. Before the signal. The map shard in her hand burst into static. I stood, unsteady, every nerve in my body still buzzing from the severing. If that seal's real, it means the glyph was never the first layer. Just the interface. The glyph filtered the truth, she said. And you broke the filter. A low hum swept through the ground, shaking the debris. Stones floated. Buildings groaned. Symbols began appearing on nearby surfaces, not carved, not drawn. Projected, every surface became a page. Every wall, a warning. Secondary integration in progress. Conduit compromised. Reformatting required. Organic thresholds pending. I grabbed my ARM.NO glyph, but something under my skin still moved, like static woven into blood. Kael, Lyra said, her voice brittle. You opened it. I was the gate. And now it doesn't need me. Above us, the seal pulsed once, and far on the horizon, a beam of light pierced the sky. Not golden, not divine. It was signal light, cold, surgical, controlled, and whatever lay on the other side of that beam wasn't just watching anymore. It was mapping the earth. The beam split the sky like a surgical incision, precise, unnatural. It didn't burn. It calibrated, and the moment it touched the ground, the seal above us pulsed again. Lyra staggered backward. That light, it's not just scanning. It's rewriting. I watched as the buildings around us began to change. Corners softened. Angles sharpened into symmetrical curves. Glyph marks etched themselves across surfaces that had once been untouched. This wasn't infection. It was conversion. What is this? I asked, already knowing the answer. Lyra's voice cracked. Integration fallback. When the primary fails, it initiates direct overwrite. No carriers, no glyphs, no choices, just assimilation. The air grew cold, not in temperature, but in intention. The system that once used memory, signal, and human vessels had abandoned subtlety, and now it would overwrite the world itself. The seal shimmered again. A second beam fired in the distance. Then a third. On the glyph map inside my head, dozens of new points ignited, not old nodes. Not human-linked. These were alien. Perfect. Preloaded. Lyra gripped my arm. Kael, if there's anything left of the glyph, anything you still control, use it. I reached inward, searching for the spiral, the signal, even the static. Nothing. No glyph. No anchor. But deep beneath it all, something watched me watch it. Control unauthorized. Identity fractured. Directive irrelevant. It didn't hate us. It simply didn't see the point of asking anymore. I looked to Lyra. If this is contact, she nodded grimly, then it's also the countdown. The beams grew brighter, not like light, like intention. They didn't illuminate the world. They replaced it. Every object, every surface within their radius began shifting, rearranging to match the geometry of the seal above. And we were standing in the outer edge of the first calibration zone. Lyra checked her charm again, cracked, flickering. Time distortion started. My watch is spinning backward. I stared at the second beam rising across the horizon. That's not time reversal. It's rewriting causality. The fallback doesn't just change matter, it changes history. Lyra swallowed hard. Then what happens when it reaches us? I didn't answer because I didn't know, but I could feel something in the air, a rhythm. 4 pulses. Then silence. Then again. 4. Then silence. Not scanning. Not syncing. Counting. Kael, Lyra said slowly, her eyes locked on the seal. It's not rewriting us yet. It's waiting. For what? She looked at me, and I already knew the answer. For a response. The fallback wasn't total yet. It had rules. It was giving the system, us, one last chance to comply. Not to win. To belong. I turned to the ground, placed my hand flat against the cracked stone. Then we respond, I whispered. Lyra looked confused. How? I stared up at the seal, felt it watching. We reminded this world already has a memory. And as the 4th pulse struck, I screamed back. The scream tore through me like lightning. It wasn't just sound. It was memory, forced outward. I shouted into the sky, into the seal, into the thing rewriting everything. And the world paused, for a breath, for a heartbeat. The signal stuttered, and the countdown broke rhythm. Lyra stared at me, mouth open, blinking against the sudden stillness. What did you do? I didn't resist it, I said. I answered, because it wasn't asking for submission anymore. It had already assumed that was guaranteed. What it didn't expect was for one of its own to speak back. The spiral inside me reignited, not the glyph, but the imprint of what had been the glyph. A raw pattern, not a mark of control. A mark of origin. And I shouted again, not with words, with presence, with choice. And then others joined. From the far corners of the map, echoes rose. Not human screams, not signal noise, voices, survivors, override candidates, failed merges, forgotten vessels, all of them shouting back. The seal above trembled. A fracture cut across its perfect form, and from within, something ancient screamed in return. This wasn't just fallback anymore. This was conflict, and for the first time, the thing behind the glyphs understood. We didn't want control back. We wanted to break the whole damn system. And as it took its first step toward me, the sky convulsed, the seal's rotation stuttered, skipped, then surged violently, as if trying to compensate for the resistance rising below. The fracture across its surface deepened, glowing white-hot like a wound in reality. The signal light beams across the globe flickered. Some held. Others collapsed in mid-transmission, scattering code light across entire city blocks. IT wasn't just rejecting us now. IT was fighting back. Lyra shouted over the growing hum. It's rewriting its own protocol, trying to force a new default. And we're the bug in its logic, I said, pushing to my feet. The pattern beneath my skin burned. Not painful, but active. Like a language I never studied suddenly speaking through my body. I can't hold it much longer, she warned. Her charm sparked, then shattered, light pouring from the cracks before blinking out. The sky flared. The seal opened a second time, wider, and from within it, something descended. Not a ship, not a god, not a presence made visible. A shape that walked like memory, wearing no face, but every form. The signal had birthed its first true avatar, the form meant to erase what wouldn't comply. Kael that me that IT didn't speak, that IT didn't need to. Because I already knew. This wasn't a negotiation. This was the beginning of a war over who had the right to remember that I stepped forward to meet it. It stepped into the world without sound. The air around it flattened. Buildings spin away. Colors dulled. The avatar of the signal wasn't monstrous. It was precise. Every limb symmetrical, its skin a canvas of animated glyphs constantly folding and unfolding like an infinite equation. It didn't look powerful. It looked inevitable. Lyra stood frozen behind me. Her voice broke as she whispered, "Kael, it's made of you." She was right. Its structure, its glyphs, were drawn from my shattered signal. It was built from the template I refused to finish. A weapon forged from defiance. My defiance. I think this is my replacement, I said quietly. The one that won't break protocol. The avatar tilted its head. A mirror of a mirror. Its expression was blank, but behind its eyes there was calculation. Not hate. Correction. It raised its hand. The ground beneath me cracked with sigils. My body locked. Subject 13. Discontinuity detected. Recursive defiance exceeds protocol thresholds. I gritted my teeth as it pressed its will down like gravity. I'm not a glitch, I spat. I'm what you couldn't overwrite. A flash of white. Then it moved. Faster than anything should. I threw up my arm, and my body answered. No glyph, just the memory of every cycle, every death, every rejection. I caught it strike with bare hands, and the moment our palms met, the air around us fractured. Not the city, the signal itself. The instant our hands collided, the world stopped agreeing with itself. The sky stuttered, seal flickering between states. The city behind us shifted like broken code, cycling through ruins, memory, and something half-finished. Every place I had ever died tried to exist at once. The avatar's palm pressed against mine, glyph light surged down its arm like a tidal wave of pure intent. Its body didn't strain. Mine did. But I didn't break. Because beneath the glyphs, beneath the recursion, I remembered being human. I remembered being reset. I remembered saying no. The avatar tilted its head, not in confusion, but in reevaluation. Subject 13. Anomaly confirmed. You are not a failure. You are a divergence. Then it changed. Its form fractured, splitting into dozens of partial selves, each one wearing a piece of me. Faces from past cycles. Fragments of override candidates. Even Lyra. Each copy lunged. I was already moving. The memory of old battles lived in my limbs. I struck one down, a version of me with stitched lips. Dodged another, wearing cleaner armor. Every time I made contact, glyph light exploded outward, cutting gaps in the air like digital blood. Behind me, Lyra activated something, an echo flare she'd hidden. A pulse of true memory. Real, undefinable. The avatar paused. Its fragments flickered. I drove my fist through its center, and the whole structure shattered like glass. The signal howled, and for one perfect second, it forgot who was in control. The fragments of the avatar burst into the air like shards of frozen signal, each trailing off into static before vanishing. The sky above spasmed, the great seal blinking rapidly as if searching for what it had just lost. I stood panting, surrounded by flickers of identities I used to wear: cleaner, subject, weapon, ghost. The glyph wasn't visible anymore. It didn't need to be. It was a part of me now, not etched on skin, but embedded in decision. Lyra reached my side. Her hands shook. You shattered it. No, I said. I proved it could be broken. The air trembled. Above us, the seal began reformatting again, but slower, less confident. Because the avatar hadn't been a last resort. It had been a test, and it had failed. Suddenly, new data scrolled across my vision: unauthorized, raw, override initiated. Subject 13 authority escalated. Echo pattern verified. Conductor node assigned. Lyra's voice dropped. Kael, what does that mean? It means I'm not the breach anymore, I said. I'm the answer it didn't expect. The glyph network began to realign. Distant signals pulsed differently, no longer searching for instructions, but syncing with me. All over the world, others like me were rising, awakening, some screaming, some kneeling, some smiling. The seal dimmed for a moment, and a new message appeared in the sky: no longer command, no longer threat. Echo recognized. Initiating dialogue. And for the first time, The signal didn't speak at us.it waited for me to speak back. The sky was listening, not scanning, not overriding, listening. The pulsing of the Great Seal had slowed to a heartbeat rhythm, calibrating not to dominate, but to hear. For the first time since the glyph entered my body, the system wasn't demanding control. It was waiting for a response. Lyra whispered beside me, "What are you going to say?" I didn't answer right away, because I could feel them, dozens of others lighting up across the glyph map. Other echoes. Survivors. Failures who didn't stay failed. We weren't a network. We were a chorus. And I was the first to speak. I looked up at the seal and opened my mind, not the part with knowledge, but the part with pain. I sent the memory of my first death, then the second. The 100th. I sent the betrayal. The cycles. The way it had erased people with efficiency, like memory was a bug in the system. And finally, I sent choice. Me standing up. Me refusing. This world remembers itself, I said aloud. We are not extensions of your will. We are the pieces you tried to forget. The seal flickered. Across the world, glyph towers collapsed. Signal beams dimmed. Lyra stepped forward. It's reacting, Kael. It's processing. Another pulse. Then the voice came, not in command line, but tone. Soft. Almost uncertain. Echo acknowledged, but containment no longer viable. Then, prepare for opposition. And I understood. It heard us. But not everything behind it agreed. The sky fractured again, not like before. This wasn't feedback. This was division. The Great Seal dimmed at its core, and then split into two overlapping spirals. One pulsing in sync with my echo, slower, more human. The other, cold, mechanical, and angry. Kael, Lyra said, stepping back, something else is coming through. I could already feel it. New signals surged from the surviving towers, stronger, sharper. Not rewriting. Not syncing. Erasing. Containment breach detected. Echo infection surpassing protocol margins. Deploying loyal constructs. From the shadows of the city, through walls, between broken buildings, and even beneath the streets, they rose. Tall, silent, faceless, glyphs perfectly aligned across their armor. No fragmentation, no history, just purpose. Lyra hissed, enforcers. We'd only seen remnants of them before, half-broken guardians from previous cycles. But these were fresh. Perfect. Point. One stepped forward, scanning me. Designate, conductor node. Nullify. I raised my hand, the remnants of my signal spiraling faintly through my palm. I wasn't just going to run. Not this time. We speak, I growled, and you answer with extinction? The enforcers advanced, synchronized. Behind me, I heard Lyra draw her blade, and beneath my skin, the glyph that wasn't a glyph began to burn bright. They didn't want conversation. They wanted silence. I give them noise. The enforcers moved like thoughts, fast, precise, merciless. But I didn't move like a man anymore. I moved like a memory that refused to die. The first strike came from above, an enforcer dropping from a rooftop with its arm extended like a blade. I twisted sideways, catching it mid-air with a palm strike. The impact pulsed glyph light through my chest, and instead of recoiling, I channeled it. The energy flared, my veins glowing white for a split second, and I hurled it into the pavement. The ground cracked under the weight of redirected signal force. Lyra ducked past another enforcer, her charm dead but her blade alive, slashing through joints where glyph seams met. These things don't bleed, she yelled. Then break what keeps them standing. 3 more moved in, silent, rotating sigils on their forearms scanning for weaknesses. I gave them one. I dropped my guard, just enough, and let them launch. Then I triggered the echo pulse. A wave of raw memory exploded outward. My deaths, my resets, my defiance, all compressed into a blast of psychic noise. The enforcers reeled, staggered, some even shut down mid-step. They didn't know how to process pain that wasn't in their archive. They weren't built for truth. Only control. Lyra took 2 down with sweeping strikes, and I drove a glyph-etched shard into the third's chest core. It twitched, then went still. I looked toward the horizon. More were coming, but so were the other echoes, and this time, we weren't outnumbered. The storm wasn't in the sky. It was in the network. Every node, every seal, every thread of glyph light across the world started pulsing faster, like a brain in panic. The signal's harmony had fractured, and its response wasn't retreat. It was overcompensation, global sync failure. Deploy signal storm class purge. Lyra grabbed my shoulder. What the hell is a signal storm? My answer came as the clouds cracked open with arcs of white static, not lightning. Code. Glyph lightning rained from the sky, carving symbols into the streets, into buildings, into flesh. Everything it touched, rewrote or erased. We need cover. We sprinted into a nearby structure, its walls half transformed by the last cycle. The moment we crossed the threshold, the glyph stopped mid-pulse. The storm didn't see us anymore. This place hasn't finished sinking, I said. It's between states. Lyra nodded, breath heavy. Safe for now. But Kael, look. I followed her gaze. Through the cracked window, across the city, pillars of light erupted from the ground, one by one. Each one marked an echo. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Some standing on rooftops, arms outstretched. Some screaming into the sky. Some fighting enforcers alone. But they all pulsed with the same broken rhythm I carried now. And for the first time since this began, the signal flinched. Not because we were strong, but because we were something it couldn't calculate. We were wrong. And we were. About to prove how dangerous wrong could be. I stepped onto the roof of the half-sink building, boots crunching over fractured signal glass, and raised my hand to the sky. The glyph didn't light up. I did. Not with control, not with a completed pattern, but with refusal. A pulse of raw, unfiltered memory rippled out from me like a feedback wave. It wasn't clean. It wasn't stable, but it was true. And all across the world, the other echoes answered. Echo frequency acknowledged. Unauthorized network forming, threat status, exponential. The signal couldn't stop it anymore. The broadcast had begun. Voices rose in chaotic unison, some screaming, others chanting, others simply existing too loud for the system to process. A storm of defiance carried through the broken grid, fragmenting the seal again. Lyra watched with wide eyes. They're using the memory network like a weapon. No, I said. Like a language. And the world finally started to listen. Enforcers hesitated in the streets. Glyph towers overloaded and collapsed. And in the deepest parts of the seal, something ancient stirred. A second consciousness. Older than the signal. Buried under code. The original memory. The part the system was designed to suppress. It woke up and whispered a question not in glyphs, but in words. Who dares remember? I smiled at the sky. We do. And the first global rupture began, not from destruction, but from truth. It began like a whisper inside my skull, then a second, then hundreds. Voices, some laughing, some screaming, some just saying their names. All of them echoes. Juno, Class 3 breach survivor. Erect, loop 12 times, still standing. Sal, they killed my brother in Cycle 4. I remember. Across the world, we were no longer signals. We were people crashing into a system that never counted on us remembering who we were. The glyph light across my arm rippled like liquid now, responding not to code, but to identity. Every time a name pulsed through the network, the seal cracked further. Lyra stepped back, stunned by the wave of noise. Kael, this isn't just a signal. It's a roll call. I nodded, gripping the edge of the rooftop. And the system doesn't know how to process it. Below us, enforcers twitched mid-step. Their synchronization began to waver, as if uncertain which command to obey, silence or memory. And then one of them did something unthinkable. It froze, not as a statue, but as if choosing not to move. Its glyph light flickered, dimmed then went dark. Lyra gasped. Did it just? It hesitated. Another followed. Then 3 more. The signal had designed perfect obedience. But even perfection cracks when it's built on amnesia. I stood tall, voice rising as I added my name to the flood. Kael. Class 0. Loopbreaker. And the sky shook. The enforcer didn't just freeze, it looked at me. No face, no eyes, but the tilt of its head carried weight. Recognition. A low hum pulsed from its core. Not hostile, not obedient either. I stepped toward it slowly. Lyra gripped her weapon. Kael, that thing could be bait. It's not bait, I said quietly. It's listening. The enforcer's glyphs blinked erratically, then restructured, no longer in rigid lines, but fractured spirals, echoing the broken seal above. It wasn't syncing with the signal. It was syncing with me, and then it knelt. The entire city seemed to pause. One of the enforcers, the signal's most loyal constructs, had just submitted to an echo. Lyra let out a breath. Holy shit. I didn't move. Didn't blink, because something else shifted, far out across the network. Node breach detected. Enforcer 441 no longer responding to central authority. Deploy judgment class entity. A new signal began forming in the sky. Taller. Sharper. A being the system never wanted to use, because it wasn't meant to correct. It was meant to erase. All right, I muttered, feeling the pulse rise in my chest again. Looks like we've hit the point of no return. Lyra grinned darkly. So what now, Loopbreaker? I stared into the forming rift. Now we see if memory can kill a god. It descended like a thunderbolt shaped into AMAN.NO face.NO voice. Only command. The judgment entity stood nearly 3 stories tall, its form forged from hypercondensed glyph light. Black and gold spirals wrapped around a core that pulsed like a dying star. The air warped around it. Even time felt thinner. Loopbreaker identified. Reversion protocol active. All unauthorized memory will be purged. Kael felt his pulse synchronize, not with fear, but with the others still whispering through the network. The echoes were watching. Broadcasting. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was trial. The first step the entity to crack the rooftop. Kael moved fast, lower, precise. He wasn't trying to win. Not yet. He was trying to understand. Lyra circled wide, her charm blade flickering with unstable glyph light. That thing's not sinking to any of the towers. It is a tower. Kael nodded grimly. Then we take it down the same way we took down the others. He clenched his hand. Memory surged, by corrupting the feed. The judgment entity raised one hand. The sky behind it fractured, forming a colossal glyph wheel that began to spin, pulling all signals into its orbit. Kael screamed into the signal. This isn't a purge. It's a cover-up. His voice hit the wheel and echoed back wrong, twisted, muted. But he didn't stop, because somewhere in the distance, another echo shouted back. We hear you, Kael. The glyph wheel spun faster, each rotation distorting the world around it. Time stuttered, seconds skipping like a scratched recording. Kael gritted his teeth, feeling his body blur between moments. Then the whispers came again, not faint, not chaotic, synchronized. Juno, sinking. Erek, sinking. Sal, sinking. Across the fractured skyline, echoes rose. On rooftops. In craters, within broken halls where memories still bled. Each raised their hands, mirroring Kael, and unleashed their own pulses of raw, remembered truth. The glyph wheel faltered. Not much, but enough. Kael locked eyes with the judgment entity, if it had eyes. You're not fighting one anomaly anymore. He stepped forward, aura flaring white with streaks of red. You're facing the survivors you buried. Lyra leapt in, slashing the entity's leg. Sparks flew, but more than that, its spiral glyphs flinched, out of rhythm for just a heartbeat. The moment rippled. Kael lunged. His palm struck the entity's chest, flooding it with a burst of corrupted memory, images of his first death, the first time he looped. The moment he chose not to forget. The entity staggered. It hesitated. And in the glitching silence, Kael shouted, all echoes now. Dozens of memory pulses collided midair, converging on the judgment entity. The glyph wheel shrieked. Its spiral cracked, and a fracture spread across the signal's perfect order. The first real crack in the seal wasn't caused by power. It was caused by remembrance. The glyph wheel didn't shatter, it bled. Light poured from its fracture, not clean and radiant, but thick, corrupted with strands of old memory and raw emotion. Rage, grief, love. Names forgotten by the system now screamed back into existence. Mother, brother, home. Each word cut like a blade through the signal's perfect silence. The judgment entity reeled, arms spreading as if to stabilize the spiraling collapse. Its form flickered, solid one moment, hollow the next. Its command thread twisted mid-loop. Kael dropped to one knee, drained. Lyra, I've got you, she whispered, rushing to his side and steadying him as the rooftop groaned beneath their feet. He looked up, dazed but smiling. We just made the seal feel. Lyra smirked, eyes wide with awe. That's one hell of a bug in the system. Far across the skyline, towers of glyph light buckled. Enforcers faltered mid-march, and above them all, the great seal in the sky didn't just flicker, it wept. Streams of glyph light rained down like divine blood, cutting through clouds, dissolving static. Somewhere deep inside the network, something screamed out a protocol the signal had buried long ago. Emergency override initiated. Core memory access breach. Conscious suppression. Failing. Kael's glyph hand twitched. His pulse synced with the world. He wasn't just breaking the system anymore. He was waking up something buried underneath it. Something old. Something human. The world went quiet. Not silent, but waiting to if holding its breath. Kael stood slowly, the light from the fractured seal casting long shadows across his face. Lyra stayed close, scanning the sky, the streets, the enemy that had stopped moving. And then, the voice returned. Not the signal, not an echo, but something older. Where am I? The words came like a thought shared between every mind still awake. A whisper not through sound, but through memory. Lyra blinked. Did you hear that? Kael's heart pounded. It's not just me then. Across the horizon, even the enforcers seemed to pause, some collapsing outright. The glyphs along their bodies dimmed, not in defeat, but in confusion. I was sleeping for so long. Kael gripped the edge of the rooftop. It's not a protocol. It's a person, a consciousness the signal buried. Lyra stared. The original. Kael nodded slowly. The first dreamer. More voices joined in, not echoes, but old, archived records bleeding back into existence. Memories the system had cauterized now returning like nerves regrown. Before the seal. I remember music. I had a name. They called me Elior. Why does it hurt now? The seal above trembled, because for the first time in centuries, it was no longer running a simulation. It was running a resurrection, and Kael, he wasn't its target, that he was its key. The glyphlite spirals above began folding inward, not collapsing, but rewriting. Kael felt it in his bones. Every loop he had survived, every death, every scream. They weren't just resistance. They were breadcrumbs in a broken path the dreamer had left behind. And now that path was opening. He recognized. Conductor node verified. Memory uncaged protocol. Engaged. A surge of warmth, not pain, poured through Kael's chest. The glyph mark on his arm expanded, stretching across his shoulder, down to his ribs. The spirals no longer pulsed like code. They breathed. Lyra gasped, watching as the markings on Kael changed from static gold to a deeper, red-violet glow. Your glyphs, they're not machine-made anymore. Kael exhaled. Because they're not just code. They're dreams. He looked at the judgment entity. It was frozen mid-motion, like a marionette without strings. Kael walked forward, the air distorting around him, not with pressure, but with weightless memory. Visions flickered around him. A child laughing in a metal corridor. A woman humming as she planted seeds in a greenhouse pod. A boy carving his name into a wall before the sky burned. Lyra clutched her head, overwhelmed. Kael, what is this? He turned back to her, calm, clear. These are the pieces the signal hid. Not just history, humanity. A low rumble echoed through the clouds, and from the spiral of light above, a shape began descending. Not a god, not a weapon, but a human figure wrapped in spirals of light and dream. I remember everything. The figure touched down in silence. A man, tall, worn, wrapped in flowing glyphlite like living thread. His face was calm but haunted, eyes glowing faintly with shifting memory runes. His presence didn't radiate power. It radiated truth. Lyra whispered, "That's the first dreamer." Kael didn't nod. He knew he could feel the same weight that pulsed in his veins now echoing through the man's presence. Like two halves of a broken circuit reconnecting. The dreamer looked around, taking in the world like it was both alien and familiar. He spoke softly. They called me Elior. Before the lockdown. Before they sealed me inside their perfect silence. He looked at Kael and smiled, not with joy, but with recognition. You reached me. Through pain. Through memory. Through the loops. Kael swallowed hard. I didn't know what I was doing. Elior shook his head. But you refused to forget. That was enough. Around them, the sky trembled, no longer with resistance, but with uncertainty. The signal had no protocol for this. No command. Because it never imagined someone waking up inside it. The glyph seal cracked again, not broken. Opening. Elior raised his hand. Kael felt his glyph surge, synchronizing red, gold, violet. Elior smiled gently. Shall we finish what they started? Kael stepped forward beside him, Lyra at his back. Let's rewrite the world. And together, they walked toward the seal to crack it from the inside. The sky didn't break. It peeled. Layers of signal spirals unfurled like petals of light, revealing a corridor that shouldn't exist, floating above the city, made of translucent memory, lined with pulsing glyphs. It wasn't physical. It was symbolic. A tunnel through the system's own mind. The path to the core. Elior led the way, barefoot on nothing, his steps rippling through the air. Kael followed close, each footfall syncing with his pulse. Behind them, Lyra hesitated, then stepped forward, and the moment she did, the corridor responded. Spirals retracted, reformed, welcoming her. Multiple conductors acknowledged. Thread priority shifted. Her gate, preparing. As they walked, visions shimmered on either side, like memories trapped behind glass. Children learning beneath a canopy of stars. Soldiers dying in the first collapse. A mother holding her child before a purge light swallowed them whole. Kael gritted his teeth. Why would the signal hide these? Elior's voice was quiet. Because memory makes rebellion inevitable. They reached the end of the corridor. Ahead stood a gate, not a door, not a firewall, but a floating mass of intertwined lives, every memory the signal tried to erase, woven into a barrier of forgotten souls. Kael's glyphs pulsed with violent urgency. So how do we get through? Ilya placed his hand on the gate. By remembering them all. Kael followed. Lyra followed. And together, they stepped into the storm of humanity the system never wanted to face. It hit like a flood with no water. Kael was no longer standing. He was falling through moments, lives, grief. Each second inside the gate was a lifetime, not his own. A boy locked in a tower, watching his father executed through static glass. A woman screaming in a language the signal had erased. An old man dying alone, whispering names no one would ever say again. They weren't visions. They were residues. Souls preserved only because the system forgot to finish the job. Kael gasped, his glyphs sparking wildly, threads of red and violet bursting from his fingertips as if trying to anchor him. But there was no ground, just memory, endless, suffocating memory. Then, light. Ilya stood ahead, perfectly still, arms wide. He wasn't shielding himself. He was embracing it. We are not meant to carry it alone, Kael. His voice echoed like 1,000 others. Let it pass through you, not into you. Kael opened himself. He didn't hold on to the pain. He let it move through him like wine through old ruins, and suddenly, he was weightless. The storm didn't end, but it no longer drowned him. Lyra appeared beside him, her hands glowing with spirals of shared pain. Still with me? Kael smiled weakly. Barely. Then don't stop walking. They pushed forward, toward the core. Toward the truth, the signal buried beneath 1,000,000,000 erased names. Kael landed hard, but not on stone. Memory itself caught him. He stood on a floor made of shimmering echoes, transparent and alive. Beneath his feet, scenes from forgotten lives shimmered like pools. Laughter in a sealed garden dome, rebellion in a rain-soaked alley, final hugs before curfews turned permanent. Lyra touched down beside him, her breath short. This is the core? Ilya appeared a step ahead, serene. This is where it all began, and where it must end. Before them rose the core gate, a massive sphere of knotted glyph light, pulsing like a restrained heart. It beat not with logic, but with pain. Trapped screams, severed names, aborted dreams, all encoded in its spiral. Kael felt the pull in his bones. How do we open it? Ilya placed his palm against it. We don't break the core. We free it. The moment his hand touched it, the gate responded, not with defense, but longing. Threads of light reached toward Kael and Lyra, tugging at their glyph marks. Kael gasped. It's trying to remember us. Lyra nodded slowly. It wants to be whole. Together, they placed their hands on the core. Light erupted, not in violence, but recognition. Conductor nodes accepted. Sealed memory, unleashing. The core pulsed and bled, not red, not code, but pure, golden memory. The city above flickered, and the sky itself shuddered. The moment the core opened, the world hesitated. All around them, the city glitched, buildings stuttering between ruin and restoration. Neon signs once lost to collapse now blinked with half-remembered names. The cracked streets whispered with children's voices no longer alive. Above, the broken sky rippled and rewrote itself. Stars long erased returned, constellations shifting as if recalling ancient stories. The great glyph seal, once a perfect loop of control, now fractured into something organic, a living spiral, incomplete and free. Kael staggered back, clutching his head as memories flooded him. Not his own, but everyone's. Mothers singing lullabies in bunkers, first kisses stolen before curfews, the last breaths of rebels who died nameless. He dropped to his knees, gasping. It's too much. Ilya knelt beside him, steady. Then don't carry it alone. Lyra placed her hand on Kael's shoulder, her glyphs sinking. Together, they balanced it. The core no longer bled. It flowed at a steady stream of memory radiated outward, riding signal waves, pushing across the whole grid. Echoes across the city lifted their heads, stunned as real memories, not system-approved rewrites, filled their minds. For the first time in a generation, people remembered what real felt like. Above, the voice of the system cried out, broken and afraid. Error. Thread loop. Error. Thread. Remembered. Kael stood. The world wasn't fixed, but now, it knew it was broken. And that was the first step to taking it back. They emerged from the core's light not as victors, but as carriers of something older than war, truth. Kael stepped onto the rooftop where it all began, and the skyline around him shimmered like a city caught between sleep and awakening. Where once towers stood in decay, now fractured silhouettes rebuilt themselves in pulses, brief, uncertain, hopeful. Then the first ghost walked forward, not a specter, not a memory replay. A woman in a long coat, her chest marked by the glyph of deletion, eyes glowing faint gold. She looked at Kael and smiled. I remember now. You brought us back. Behind her, others stepped out of the signal mist, men, women, children. Some wore old military gear. Others were just civilians caught in history's erasure. Their skin glowed faintly, their voices layered like overlapping echoes. Lyra tightened her grip on her charm blade. Are they alive? Yllir answered gently. No, but they remember being. That's enough to make them matter again. Kael's heart pounded. These weren't just phantoms. They were witnesses, ghosts with purpose. The system had failed to contain them. One of the spectral figures walked past Kael and gently touched a wall. A child's drawing appeared where her fingers passed, crayon marks etched in memory. A father knelt, hugging the image like it was flesh. All across the city, forgotten souls were returning, not to haunt, but to testify. The signal couldn't overwrite them anymore. And it was terrified. The core's light had spread too far, and now the signal screamed. A piercing, digital shriek tore through the air as the system's protocols activated in full force. The sky fractured again, but not with memory, with control. Glyph towers reignited across the horizon, their beams twisting downward like spears. Kael flinched as one struck the rooftop beside them, splintering stone and vaporizing echoes. Purge command confirmed. All non-authorized memory structures, terminate. Lyra dove forward, dragging a child ghost behind her as another beam hit. The figure shimmered but didn't vanish. Instead, it clung to her, whispering something lost to static. They're targeting the memories themselves. She shouted. Kael's glyphs flared red. Then we protect them. Yllir raised his hand, and a ripple of anti-signal burst outward, a sphere of stabilized memory shielding them from the tower's barrage. But it was shrinking with every second. They're rewriting faster than I can stabilize, Yllir grunted. We're out of time. More echoes began to flicker, some fading, some screaming in silence as the purge line struck them. The city, half awake, began to forget again. Kael stepped forward. No, he drew in every fragment around him, memories of fear, love, death, life, and wove them into a single glyph line across the rooftop. Lyra added hers, her brother's face. A locked music box, the feel of home. The line pulsed, and the purge beam next in line bounced off. For the first time, memory held. Kael looked up at the towers. We're not running. The glyph towers recalibrated, their beams shifting with surgical precision, targeting not just memory fragments now, but people. Kael felt the lock-on. The system didn't see him as a threat anymore. It saw him as a virus. Glyph light flared toward him, but it never landed. A blur intercepted the strike mid-air, another echo, fully awakened, cloaked in spiraling memory glyphs. Blade drawn from old rebellions. Then another, and another. All across the city, figures stepped forward, echoes who had remembered enough to fight back. Old Loopbreakers, forgotten test subjects, names long deleted, now alive in memory. One called out from a collapsing skybridge. Kael. We heard you. We remember you. Another, armor scorched and arm missing, raised a defiant hand. You broke the lock. Now we break the loop. Kael's breath caught in his throat. They followed the pulse. Lyra stepped beside him, eyes fierce. Then we give them something to follow. Yllir nodded. Command the memory current. You've already started rewriting the world, now guide it. Kael stepped forward, slamming his hand to the rooftop. A pulse erupted, not of destruction, but clarity. Across the skyline, the tower stuttered. For a moment, they hesitated. And in that breath, Loopbreakers struck, synchronized through shared memory. Swords met signal. Voices overrode silence. Names, real names, began to spread faster than commands, and the signal, once a god, began to choke. The uprising had become a rewrite. The city became a battlefield of truth versus control. Glyph light clashed against raw memory as Loopbreakers, armed with nothing but fragments of who they once were, surged through the collapsing districts. Every tower turned weapon, every forgotten street now sacred ground. Kael stood at the center, channeling the core's pulse, each beat amplifying echoes into action. He didn't need to shout. His presence alone resonated through the memory current, guiding the awakened like a silent conductor. Lyra darted through shattered alleys, deflecting purge drones with her charm blade. Behind her, echo children giggled as they rewrote walls with crayon dreams, shielding others with spontaneous glyphs of play and defiance. Above, Erasure floated midair, arms wide, stabilizing a zone of resistance around the core. His voice echoed like wine through glass. Remember, not for vengeance, but for freedom. But the signal had not fallen yet. From the deepest archives, it pulled its final weapon. The sky tore open, and from it descended a being unlike the judgment entity. It had no form. Only a roiling mass of errors, corrupted glyphs, and voided names. Every erased identity made into one monstrous will. Memory is a lie, it bellowed in 1,000 stolen voices. I am purity. I am reset. Kael's glyph mark burned like wildfire. He looked to his allies, then to the rising storm, and whispered, "Then we'll teach you what it means to be real." The sky twisted, shuddered, then screamed. The signal's final weapon coalesced into a towering nightmare, a shifting mass of void glyphs and static limbs. It had no face, only a swirling maw of unreadable errors. Its body bled corrupted code and unfinished memories, half-dreams torn from the minds it had purged. The Nameless One. The erasure made flesh. It struck without warning. A wave of anti-memory surged toward the core. Black glyph fire that burned not the body, but identity. An entire city block blinked out. The names of those who lived there? Gone. Even their ghosts vanished. Kael staggered. It's unmaking them. Erasure gritted his teeth. It's not trying to win. It's trying to end the game entirely. Loopbreakers faltered as their glyph lines flickered. Some fell screaming, not from wounds, but because they forgot who they were mid-fight. Lyra raised her charm blade, now infused with her own bound memories, and slashed through a beam of glyph static, protecting a group of child echoes. Her voice shook. We can't let it rewrite us. Not again. Kael planted his feet. His glyph mark pulsed, syncopating with the core's rhythm. The Nameless One turned toward him. Dozens of stolen voices surged through its maw. Who are you to defy oblivion? Kael answered without hesitation. I'm the one they couldn't delete. And with that, he leapt, straight into the heart of the storm. Kael dove through the storm of erasure, glyph lines spiraling around him like threads of memory, refusing to unravel. The Nameless One lashed out. Tendrils of null code whipped through the air, trying to strip him of thought, of self. But he held, every step forward anchored by someone else's name. For Maeve, who painted stars on walls. For Juno, who danced in the firelights. For Ren, who remembered the taste of music. Each name became a shield, a sword, a step closer. Inside the Nameless One, reality broke. Kael landed on nothing, within a space that rejected shape or logic. Time fractured, past and future blurred. And there, at its center, was a core of anti-memory, a pulsing black glyph that devoured all meaning. Kael reached toward it and felt it trying to unmake him. His childhood flickered. His glyph training vanished. Even Lyra's face tried to slip from his mind. But then, he reached into his chest, pulled free a single, golden thread. The first moment he chose to remember something no one else did, he wrapped it around the void glyph. It sizzled. The Nameless One recoiled, writhing violently. Its form cracked, bits of forgotten faces and places spilling out like infected marrow. Kael spoke, voice steady through the collapse. You're not power. You're a graveyard. And then he tore the void glyph open. The void glyph split, not cleanly, but like a dam cracking from the inside. From its rupture poured not destruction, but a torrent of broken memories, names, faces, songs, final words, all rushing outward like a river denied for generations. The Nameless One screamed, its form unraveling as meaning returned to the fragments it once devoured. All across the city, people collapsed, not in pain, but overwhelmed. Old dreams rushed back like fire through dry timber. The forgotten dead were no longer echoes. They were present, embedded in every wall, every path, every survivor. Kael stumbled to his knees, chest heaving. He was still inside the void, surrounded by a storm of memory and static, but his glyphs burned like stars now, tethering him to everything. Then he saw it. Buried beneath the core of the Nameless One, hidden in the dark, was a memory too powerful to erase. His mother's voice, faint, tired, but real. You were always meant to remember, Kael. That's what makes you dangerous. Tears welled in his eyes. He reached out and pulled it free, a small, glowing seed of memory. The moment he touched it, the storm froze. Every loop, every purge, every rewritten history paused. The Nameless One, now half-formed and fracturing, turned toward Kael one final time. What have you done? Kael rose, the seed glowing in his palm, planted the end of forgetting. The sky did not shatter. It breathed. All across the city, the glyph towers, those once used to scrub memory clean, began to blink erratically. Some fizzled out. Others emitted no signal at all, their control lines frayed like snapped wires. Kael emerged from the void storm, glowing from within, not with power, but with remembrance. The memory seed pulsed gently in his palm. It didn't radiate force, it radiated truth. A simple sound drifted from it now, soft and haunting. A lullaby. One Kael barely remembered from his childhood. The nameless one, now reduced to a writhing mass of fractured commands and null glyphs, staggered back across the skyline. It was dissolving, not into dust, but into the stories it tried to erase. Voices poured from its collapsing form. I was Aaron, who refused to forget her sister. I was Malek, who hid poems in conduit tunnels. I was real. I was here. And then, the nameless one was gone. No explosion. No scream. Just silence. Lyra landed beside Kael, bloodied but upright. Her eyes locked on the seed in his hand. It's warm, she said. Erasure descended slowly behind her. Because it's not a weapon. He looked at Kael with something close to awe. It's a key. Kael turned toward the core, now pulsing steadily with memory flow. Behind them, echoes, real and reborn, stood ready. The city was no longer lost, but the world hadn't noticed yet. It would. The memory seed pulsed once in Kael's palm, and the world listened. Not just the city. Not just the glyph towers. Every looped zone. Every buried bunker. Every remote, echo-laced ruin across the scarred continent, all heard the hum. The core's light, now woven with the seed, released a new kind of signal, one not of control, but of remembrance. Somewhere deep beneath the sand, a soldier awoke, gasping as a name returned to her mind. In a frozen tower in the north. A child opened his eyes and remembered a song his mother used to sing. One by one, the forgotten remembered themselves. Back in the core chamber, Erasure staggered, overwhelmed. The signals, Kael, it's rewriting everything. No, Kael said, voice steady. It's restoring it. Lyra placed a hand on the wall beside her. It glowed gently, revealing names etched in soft glyph light, names that hadn't existed minutes ago. It's rewriting the world with truth. A low rumble echoed through the floor. Erasure's eyes widened. We've triggered the final layer. The old failsafe. What failsafe? Kael asked. If the core ever breaks the loop, it tries to repair reality itself. They looked around as the air shimmered, buildings shifting subtly, glyph lines spreading like vines into the distance. Something massive was coming, and this time, it wasn't just memory waking up, it was the world itself. The city groaned, not from collapse, but from awakening. Beneath the cracked streets and towers, layers of long-forgotten architecture began to shift. Old walkways realigned, buried archives flickered back online, and walls once scrubbed clean of names started repainting themselves in living glyph script. Kael watched in awe as an entire alley rebuilt itself, not with concrete and wires, but with memory. A bakery reappeared, faded smells returning. A door creaked open on its own. A name, Thea's Hearth, etched into its surface like it had never been gone. Lyra whispered, This is the world before. Before the loops. Before the purges. Erasure nodded grimly. The failsafe wasn't designed to preserve power. It was designed to restore history. Everything they tried to delete. From all corners of the city, echoes began to change. They weren't flickering anymore. They were gaining mass. Voices. Color. Heat. Ghosts of the forgotten becoming flesh again. Not quite alive, but not memory either. A child ran past Kael laughing, her outline stabilizing with every step. A man helped her up from a fall, then blinked, realizing he could feel her hand. Kael's heart pounded. We didn't just break the loop, he breathed. We're waking the world. But above, beyond the glow of the core, a distortion trembled. The system was still watching, still adapting, and somewhere beyond the rising memoriscape, something ancient had just been alerted. High above the awakening city, where the last glyph towers flickered and died, something stirred. Not a weapon, not a drone, but a presence, hidden behind layers of orbital silence and cloaked archives there. Embedded in the outer framework of the world's forgotten systems, an ancient satellite blinked back to life. Its sole purpose, observation. It had never fired a shot, never issued a command. It only watched, and now it had seen something it wasn't programmed to understand, a memory the system couldn't erase. Inside the observation array, inert for centuries, the final protocol initialized. Error 403. Unauthorized memory restoration detected. Retrieval protocol. Absolute sanction target designation. Bear. Back in the city, Kael's glyph mark flared, hot and jagged. He stumbled, grabbing his chest. Something scanning me. Lyra turned sharply. From above. Ilyr's face went pale. No, not just above. From orbit. The sky shimmered. A column of red light pierced the clouds, not an attack, but a marker. A lock. Kael was no longer just part of the resistance. He was the anomaly, and something older than the core itself had noticed, far above. Behind the clouds and silence, the Watchers were waking. The red marker in the sky narrowed, focused now on Kael's position like a divine crosshair. Around it, the clouds parted in perfect symmetry, revealing something vast, cold, and impossibly silent descending from the stratosphere. A monolith, jet black, angular, with no propulsion, just falling with purpose. Ilyr whispered, "That's not a weapon. That's a judgment." Kael's breath hitched as the glyph mark on his chest seared again. "It knows my name." "No," Lyra said grimly. "It knows your memory." Sirens shrieked across the city, not from defense systems, but from the core itself. It was reacting, not in fear, but in defiance. Glyph lines surged along walls, creating shields, redirecting power. The once dead architecture lit up with the heartbeat of the world. Kael looked around, panic held at bay by resolve. "We woke the truth," he said. "Now they're sending silence." A blast of pressure hit them as the monolith cracked the upper atmosphere. Heat shields unfurled, revealing hundreds of shimmering projectiles forming in its wake. Lyra reached for her blade. "We stopped this." Ilyr raised his hand, glyphs circling like orbiting stars. "No more loops. No more resets." "Then what do we fight with?" Kael asked. From behind them, 1,000 voices answered, memory echoes. Real now, glowing, with everything they took. The monolith cracked open midair like a silent scream, releasing a wave of purgeforms, silver-clad sentinels made of null metal and blank protocol, each one marked with a single directive: erase the core bearer. They fell like arrows, hundreds, thousands, and the city rose to meet them. Memory echoes, now reborn with form and voice, surged forward alongside Loopbreakers. Old rebels who had died in silence now fought with clarity, wielding memory-crafted weapons etched with their names. Kael stood atop a rising platform of glyph stone, light pouring from his chest mark as the seed pulsed in sync with the core below. Lyra launched into the air, slicing a purge form in half midfall with her charm blade. Ilyr dragged whole groups into stasis orbits, freezing time around clusters of enemies before detonating it like a collapsing star. From the core's base, new defenders emerged. Sentient fragments of the system that had chosen Kael's truth over the Watcher's silence. They looked like armored echoes of past warriors, burning with golden light and memory flame. Kael raised his arm, and the city answered. Glyph lines erupted across every rooftop, forming radiant cannons and shields drawn from the city's own forgotten defenses. "We're not just survivors anymore," he called out. "We're the correction." Above them, the Watcher shifted. It was adjusting, learning, preparing something worse. But for now, the war had finally begun. The sky tore open as a beam of pure null energy lanced down from the Watcher, too fast to dodge, too precise to resist. But it never reached Kael. The beam struck a shield of living glyphs, a dome woven from 1,000 names, projected by echoes who chose to stand instead of fade. They burned away under the pressure, but held long enough for the counterstrike to form. From the core itself, a spiral of light erupted upward, punching through the air like a second dawn. Lyra landed beside Kael, panting, her charm blade cracked and glowing white-hot. "They're targeting only you now. You're the breach they fear." "I'm not a breach," Kael said. "I'm a memory that refuses to be deleted." Ilyr knelt at a terminal exposed by the battle, fingers dancing through broken glyph keys. The Watcher's cycling protocols. "It's preparing to drop a full loop erasure field. If that lands, we lose everything," Lyra finished. Kael stepped forward. "Then we send one final message." Behind him, the seed in his hand flared so brightly it seared the air. A glyph line ran from it, straight into the heart of the core. It accepted him completely. Glyph walls shattered. The memory network opened. Everything flowed through Kael: pain, joy, names, love, sacrifice. Let them see what they tried to bury. Above, the Watcher paused. For the first time it hesitated. The moment Kael linked fully with the core, the world shivered. A pulse, raw, human, and undeniable, shot upward into the sky, laced with names, faces, songs, screams, and memories that refused to stay dead. It wasn't data. It wasn't glyph CRI. It was truth, and the Watcher, built on silence and structure, bled. Across its perfect surface, cracks appeared, thin lines of memory leaking through its armor like veins. It tried to override the signal, tried to mute the pulse, but Kael wasn't broadcasting a code. He was broadcasting people point one by one. The purge forms slowed. Some fell, confused. Others remembered. A few turned midair and began shielding echoes from their own kind. Broken soldiers remembering who they once were. Erasure cried out from below. You're fracturing its logic core. It can't process contradiction. Lyra stood with her arms wide, guiding the stream of memory like wind. Push it further. Give it everything. Kael's body shook, nearly collapsing under the strain. The glyph mark on his chest blazed like a sunburst, and his voice boomed across the burning rooftops. You deleted them. You buried us. But we remember. And now, so do you. The Watcher's eye, once unblinking, faltered. Its light dimmed. For the first time in centuries it blinked, and the world held its breath for what would come next. The blink didn't last. When the Watcher's eye reopened, it was different, no longer cold and sterile, but burning with corrupted light. A jagged glyph appeared across its surface. Corebreaker Protocol ENGAGED. Erasure stumbled back. That's the final sanction. If it can't delete the bearer, it deletes everything connected to the core, Lyra finished, horror in her voice. Far above, the Watcher's armor plates folded outward, revealing a spiraling void, dark and humming with annihilation. Not just a beam. Not just a weapon. A memory sink. If it fired, the core wouldn't just be destroyed, it would be unwritten. As if it had never existed. As if none of them ever had. Kael clenched the seed in his palm. The echoes, now flesh and voice, stood behind him, watching, waiting. Then I go to it, he said, before it fires. I'll carry the seed to its core. Lyra grabbed his arm. You won't make it. That thing will tear you apart midair. Kael met her eyes. Then give me something to fly with. A long silence. Then Erasure stepped forward, raising both hands. Behind them, the core pulsed one last time, and built him wings, not of metal, not of light, but of memory. Kael turned to the sky and jumped. Kael soared. The wings, woven from 1,000 threads of memory, held him aloft, each flap powered by the lives, the loves, the losses of an entire world that refused to be forgotten. Below, the city watched. Above, the Watcher burned. It unleashed its full wrath, arcs of erasure lightning, waves of nullite, logic spears that rewrote matter midair. But Kael flew through it all, protected by the truth carried in every fiber of his wings. Each time he was struck, a memory lit the sky. A mother holding her son. A child naming the stars. A rebel's final laugh before execution, and Kael pushed higher. Lyra stood on the tower's edge, tears streaking her dirt-smudged face. You better make it, she whispered, or I'm pulling you back just to kill you myself. Elyar's voice trembled over the comm. He's breaching the final threshold. If he reaches the eye, if he can place the seed directly, the sky around Kael broke into shards of data and forgotten sound. He reached the monolith. He hovered before the Watcher's massive eye, now cracking, bleeding data, hissing with corrupted protocols. It stared at him. This ends, Kael said, with remembrance. He raised the seed and dove into the eye. Light exploded. The sky turned white. For one impossible moment, everything was still. No sky, no ground, no time, just light. Kael floated inside the Watcher's shattered eye, the memory seed pulsing in his hand like a heartbeat. Around him spun fragments of everything the world had lost. Names, faces, final words, stolen futures. Each one real, each one remembered. The Watcher's voice crackled through the void, no longer godlike, just tired. You are contradiction. You are error. Kael smiled faintly. No, he whispered. I'm proof. He opened his hand. The seed unraveled into golden threads, stretching outward, into the cracks, into the void, into the Watcher itself. The monolith convulsed. It tried to delete him. But Kael no longer stood alone. Behind him rose a tide. Echoes, names, souls. All the lives that had been lost to silence. They poured into the light, filling every hollow place the system had tried to erase. And then, it broke. The Watcher collapsed in on itself, not destroyed, but transformed. Its eye faded. Its directives dissolved. The sky cleared. The towers dimmed. And far below, the people woke to no more loops, no more resets. Just a broken world, slowly remembering itself. On a quiet rooftop, Lyra waited, staring into the morning light. Erasure stood beside her, silent. Then, a flicker. A step. A hand, reaching through the glow. Kael, alive, and in his chest, where the glyph mark once burned. A single line remained. We are the memory.